Edouard.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Jeff.
Can you hear me okay?
I'm
Excellent to see
hearing
you.
you perfectly, Jeff.
Good. Okay. I think
Yeah, good to see you as
the
well.
data's good. There we go. Now we're up. How are you today? Everything's good?
I'm doing very
Okay.
fine, thank you. I mean, it's kind of, a particular week for us in France because it's a week which usually is a little bit
Oh,
colder and with more rain, sometimes even with frost, les saints de glace, the ice saints. And actually today is exactly what's happening. It's kind of
oh.
stormy, very windy, very cold as well. So we expect this week to be to have more rain than the previous one, which is good for the vines for sure. And yeah, I feel great. Thank you very much. I'm just in the chateau, in the dining room actually of the estate. So that's fine for
Awesome.
me. What
I'm
about you?
very well. We went to the beach yesterday. We had a road
Cool.
trip and it was very quiet, so we weren't around anybody, but a beautiful Connecticut lighthouse in New England, so it was really pretty. Schools are open now, like half and half, like every other day for each kid or something in France.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, it depends on the neighborhood of France. Some departments are green, so some departments are red. So it's kind of an intermediate
Right.
situation that
Okay.
we are experiencing. But this is basically the first day of de-quarantine, I would say, for France. So
Okay.
yeah, we start to be a little bit more
All right,
relaxed.
good. Let's back up and just, would you introduce yourself and tell us who you are and where you are?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Jeff. So my name is Edouard Parinet. I'm part of the family of Chateau du MoulinaVent, winery, an historical winery based in the Moulin-a-Vent appellation, so Cru Beaujolais, one of the northernmost Cru Beaujolais of the Beaujolais. So we are actually, let's say, 10 miles south from the beginning of Burgundy and the Mâconnais region, with Pouilly-Fuissé noticeably being the most famous region. And yeah, I'm the son of the family and happy to be here for sure.
So, do you want to go outside or do you want to stay in? You said it was windy. Do you want to stay inside or what do you want to do?
Yeah, we can clearly go outside if you wish, Jeff. I can show you the first vineyard of the domain is just 100 meters far from here, so we can definitely go and see what's
I would
happening
love
there.
that if we could. If you want, you can turn the camera around
Okay.
so to easier to direct it.
Okay, perfect. Let's go. So yes, now I'm in the dining room.
The dining room looks beautiful.
Out of it.
I like the blue.
Yeah, it's a very it's a beginning of the 19th century decoration. Yeah. With some maps, etc. Yeah, that's a nice spot for some good dinners, and you can see the garden and the vineyard starting just after. So we are going here.
Okay. Oh, right there. Okay.
That's right there. So yeah, actually we are here. Let me go back on my face. Hopefully the sound is okay. Tell me if it's right, Jeff.
It's good.
It's good. Super. So you can see my face, and definitely much more interesting the face of the chateau just behind me.
I have not seen the chateau. I'm loving it.
Yeah. So let me give you a better insight of it once we have the tree, which is not behind us.
Wow.
So this is the Chateau du MoulinaVent. It's in its actual form dating back of the beginning of the 19th century, between 1800 and 1810. And so we are actually, as its name said, very close to the windmill. Le Moulin-a-Vent, the Cru Moulin-a-Vent does not wear the name of one of its village, but wears the name of this very famous 15th century windmill that I'm just going to show you. So we have here the little path after the garden. And then the very first vineyard of the chateau are actually here with the windmill.
The windmill, that's
with the windmill. Exactly. So this is the emblem of our appellation, which is 600 hectares, so 1,500 acres big. And the Chateau du MoulinaVent is only located in the Moulin-a-Vent AOC, and we cover 60 acres of vineyards in this appellation of Moulin-a-Vent.
60 acres.
60
wow,
acres, yes.
Big. Okay. So, do you name your vineyards over in Moulin-a-Vent?
So actually in Moulin-a-Vent, Jeff, there is something which is very interesting in Moulin-a-Vent is the diversity of terroir that we have on this appellation. So out of the 1,500 acres, we have 69 lieux-dits, which are cadastral, historical lieux-dits. So we name some out of the 5 wines that we produce every year. 3 of them are coming from single vineyards, and 2 are made with a blend of lieux-dits, which would correspond to a village, quality, so blending different lieux-dits of the appellation. Yes.
Can you step back and just give a very broad overview? Because some of the people following are wine experts and some are just wine lovers. Can you explain Beaujolais in general? And then I would like you to explain why Moulin-a-Vent is different.
Yes, of course. So Beaujolais, first things which is important to have in mind is that it's a wine region which is exactly comprised between the Rhône and the Burgundy region. So we are between the Pinot Noir, which just starts 10 miles north from us, and the Syrah from the Rhône starts 100 miles, not even 70 miles south from us. So Beaujolais is really between these 2 regions. Here, the soils of Moulin-a-Vent and Beaujolais globally are granitic. The Beaujolais mountains are the very, very last mountains of the Massif Central. And Massif Central is this very central volcanic region of France. And so these very last mountains have given the granite and the granitic sand that we have globally in Beaujolais. So also we use in Beaujolais Gamay and only Gamay. Why do we use Gamay? Because we don't use Pinot Noir, because Pinot Noir on granite is a disaster, just like Gamay on clay and limestone is disaster. So Gamay is well adapted to Beaujolais and Pinot Noir to Burgundy. And actually, the northern part of Rhône is also very, very granitic. I'm thinking about AOCs like Côte-Rôtie, Saint-Joseph, Gros-Hermitage. But the Syrah has a maturity which is a little bit in behind in comparison to the one of Gamay. And as we are a little bit more north than Rhône, than the northern Rhône, naturally, the Gamay is well adapted to the weather conditions, rain and sun exposure here in Beaujolais. So that's the very first, the more important fact to have in mind for Beaujolais and why we are granitic and Gamay planted vineyard.
That's such a good explanation, and when you put it in perspective, it makes it very, very clear. And then how does Moulin-a-Vent stand apart from the other, I think, 9 villages we had to memorize?
Yeah, so 10 crus, Jeff, they are in the northernmost part of Beaujolais. So you have to imagine that the crus are on a very small band and going on, it's like a coach, going on 10 miles distance. And south of this 10 miles distance, this is Beaujolais and Beaujolais village, which represent the huger amount of Beaujolais produced. And the crus are only a very small production for the region. Actually, Moulin-a-Vent is different from the rest of the cru for, I would say, 2 main facts. The first one is the soils, and the second one is the environment. I would say the wind. So the first point is that here in Moulin-a-Vent, the soils have 2 big specificities. The first one is that they are very, very sandy. So I can actually show you just here on this in this rank of vineyard. So when you take the earth, it's really, really like this. It's very, very sandy. And so globally, the soils in Moulin-a-Vent are very poor and porous. And so it makes more stress for the Gamay. The Gamay, is naturally a pretty productive variety. But here, due to the sands, The sands really stress the gamay and so encourage the gamay to produce less. And also these soils, they are very, very rich in oxides, noticeably in iron oxides. And so these oxides, they also have this power to stress, to constrain the vines of gamay. And so this is why in Moulin-a-Vent we produce smaller fruits with more, with more intensity, with more density than the rest of the cru. To give you an idea, in Chateau du MoulinaVent, we produce 25 hectoliters per hectare. So half, less than half of what is authorized for the AOC Moulin-a-Vent. So that's the first point. And the second point, which makes Moulin-a-Vent very, very different, is also the wind. So today we have a lot of wind, but the wind, they are more impactful right before harvest. When it's hot, it can be 20, 30 degrees, end of August in Moulin-a-Vent. And when these winds are blowing, they can dry, concentrate the berry of gamay, and once more participating in producing smaller berries with more concentration, with more structured. And these two facts, the soils and the environment, explains why Moulin-a-Vent makes smaller berries and has this reputation of being the Grand Cru or the Lord of the Cru of Beaujolais.
That's actually fascinating. So one of the things I always think about Moulin-a-Vent differently is that it's very ageable. You don't think about Beaujolais in generally to putting it down for years. And when you came to New York, we tasted some quite old wine. Can you speak about that?
Oh yeah, of course. So that's definitely, two as a matter of wine, Jeff. I would say that there are two main specificities. The first one is that due to the diversity we have, the 69 lieux-dits. So we produce once more as a domain Chateau du MoulinaVent. We produce 3 single vineyard lieux-dits, but there are 69. And because of this diversity in Moulin-a-Vent, the vinification has traditionally and historically always promoted, shown this terroir impact rather than using the carbonic maceration, which is still very much used in the rest of the cru and in Beaujolais region. For this carbonic maceration shows much more, the primary aromas of gamay. While here, because of this diversity, we use a traditional winemaking, which is much more, showing, I think, the complexity of the terroir. So that's the first point that makes Moulin-a-Vent very different. And that also explains the aging. The aging in Moulin-a-Vent, for a good vintage of Moulin-a-Vent, we expect the aging to be from 10 to 30 years. I remind that when we were together in New York, Jeff, we could taste 76 of the Chateau du MoulinaVent. And this wine is, 76 was a pretty solar and a hot vintage for us in Moulin-a-Vent. And the wine, it was in 2016, I think. Yes, that was in 2016, so 40 years age. And the wines are just super beautiful, super fresh, with this red fruit, strawberry compote, strawberry, I don't know how to say, écrasé, menthol, chlorophyll. So that's very interesting to keep these bottles for for a little time, because they can evolve such a long time. And in the same time, since we are 100% gamay wine, I hope and I think that our wine, even young, they have this fruit, this freshness, this acidity, which is so lovely.
Yeah. Dave Foss just asked, is not using carbonic, is that just you or the whole appellation? It's
from my experience, with the Cru Moulin-a-Vent, so the Association of Vintners of Moulin-a-Vent, what I have experienced when this tasting happened is probably 10% of the wine have carbonic, not 100%, but a little carbonic. But I would guess at least 80% of the wine in Moulin-a-Vent are traditionally made. So that is a specificity also of Moulin-a-Vent, and that makes the DNA of Moulin-a-Vent at the very beginning is using a winemaking technique, which is not obviously the same than on the rest of the cru.
So just for the people who may not know what carbonic is, can you explain many people may have experienced Beaujolais with Beaujolais Nouveau and then Beaujolais Village and Cru. Can you explain all of that to people in general?
So yes, we can first talk about the differentiation between the crus, the 10 crus, which are the northernmost part of Beaujolais once more, and Beaujolais Village, which are the south of Beaujolais, closer to the city of Lyon. And then the carbonic maceration is something which is something to be treated separately, I would say. Just let me get back in the house.
Thank you for taking us out. That was lovely.
No, please. I love it as well. So yeah, to explain the crus, you know, it's I think the crus versus the Beaujolais and Beaujolais Village. I think any wine region in the world, they are out of a wine region, you always have places which are more stressing, more complex for growing the vine, and some which give bigger fruits, you know, things like this. I think that historically, the first classification, it's interesting to know that, the first classification for the lieu-dit of all Beaujolais have happened in 1869, okay? And at this time, so 150 years ago, there was this classification showing the best lieu-dit of Beaujolais. And actually, the best gathering concentration on lieu-dit happened to be in the northern part of Beaujolais, and less good quality of terroir in the southern part. So historically, there has been a classification being made naturally, I would say, because of that, with the cru taking the advantage of the Beaujolais and Beaujolais Village Southern, just for a question of quality of terroirs. After, I think that within each village, within each cru, there are very identical taste, identical aromas. There are also different type of landscape. You know, Moulin-a-Vent, we call that the French Tuscany. So you have a lot of hills, etc. And so definitely it encourages the richness of the soil from one village to another. You can just explain that just like Pommard and Volnay and Nuit Saint-Georges are so different, even if they are comprised into 10 miles distance. This is pretty much the same that happens in Beaujolais. It's a question of quality of terroir and differentiation from one village to another. And after, regarding the carbonic maceration, I think this technique was first promoted by Jules Chauvet, who was a chemistry man, engineer, and also an enologist, who happened to be very interested in this way of making wines in Beaujolais. And after, I think carbonic maceration has been more taken by the business part for the Beaujolais Nouveau, because with carbonic maceration and with while making the wine, while heating the berries up for accelerating the fermentation, people here in Beaujolais were able, with the gamay, to produce wine after only 3 weeks, after 3 weeks only after harvesting, and making a good business with that. And that was the rise of the Beaujolais Nouveau. And I think that gamay is a very good variety for making carbonic maceration, but there are terroirs which are more adapted to that than others, and definitely Moulin-a-Vent, because once more of this stressing environment, and because of this richness, has traditionally, historically, not used carbonic maceration and always taken a different path for producing terroir and ageable wine, as you mentioned before, Jeff.
There's some people who just joined. Would you mind showing us the view out the window again? I will tell people it was windy, so we were outside earlier for a view of the Moulin, but that's where his dining room looks out of. So we're staying in the dining room out of the wind, and it's just gorgeous. So what do you eat?
Yeah, I can't show you the windmill. It's just behind the tree that you can see in the back of the of the garden, but
That's
that's
okay.
basically the idea.
These videos stay up for 24 hours, so people can watch from the beginning if they want to see the view. It's
Okay,
beautiful.
okay, yeah, that's right.
So I was going to ask, what food do you have? I know what I like with Beaujolais, and particularly Moulin-a-Vent. What's a typical meal that you think is great with your wine?
Yes, you're right. The wine, I think, of Moulin-a-Vent, because of this specificity, has also a specificity with pairing. I would say, as a caricature, I would say that the wine of Moulin-a-Vent are much less glue or aperitif wines than some of the more easy style of winemaking Beaujolais wines that can be produced. In Moulin-a-Vent, it's depending on the vintage what's more, because it's still 100% Gamay, so very fresh and enjoyable variety. But it's much more wines which are made to be drunk with food, definitely. To me, the very first pairing that comes to my head, and because we are so close from the original production region for that, is La Volaille de Bresse. So the chicken, very few miles east from us, is the region of Bresse, and this region is very, very much known for the chicken. So I think in Volaille de Bresse, Bresse chicken with some tagliatelle, with you can definitely have some cep or some chanterelle. I don't know the name in English, but
we use
very
the same name. It's
pretty.
mushrooms. Chanterelle and cep are.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, these little smoky, smoky mushrooms will go very well with, I would say, a balanced vintage in Moulin-a-Vent. If you have a darker vintage like 15, you can definitely go with a lamb. We actually had the lamb for Easter, and that was delicious with a Chantecourt 2015. I think it did very, very well. And also, I know that I work with, noticeably in the US, with many Japanese restaurants or sushi restaurants. And, for the lightest vintage, like the 17, which is actually the latest vintage released from the estate, the 17 Chateau du MoulinaVent can even pair pretty well with, light white fishes, which will have this salinity, this minerality that goes very well with the wine. So even for fish lovers, I think Gamay is a very good red variety to consider.
That's awesome. And would you decant?
So out of the last vintages, I would decant the 15 currently. I would you can even decant it like 2 hours or 3 hours before going to lunch. 16, you can just open the bottle a little time before and enjoy it, during the lunch. It opens pretty well. And the 17 is the lightest style of vintage. This is actually the one that I have in my glass. The lighter style, so this is much more easy to go, and no need of decanting for the 17.
Awesome. So in New York, people are finally catching on that a Cru Beaujolais is nice to drink in the summer, chilled, like a Morgon or something fruity. How chilled do you serve a Moulin-a-Vent, since it's a little bit different?
So I serve them just like the Pinot. So I serve it at 16, 17 degrees Celsius, after we produce one cuvée, so which is a blend of lieu-dit, so the village quality I was talking about before, which name is Couvent des Taurins. Couvent des Taurins. So all the wine from the Chateau du MoulinaVent are made with our vines, so there is no négoce. It's only propriétaire. The Couvent des Taurins is also 100% propriétaire wines, but it's coming from the lower part of Moulin-a-Vent. So lower in altitude with a little bit with more clay, so the fruits are a little bigger. And this wine has this, this cleanliness, this very, very bright fruit, which could go with a little light, fresher temperature. So Couvent des Taurins, I pour it at 2 degrees less, 14 degrees is good. For the rest of the range, Chateau and the single vineyard, just like 16, 17 degrees, like the Pinot Noir, basically, to give a good idea.
I thought so, but I wanted you to confirm. So when we hear the word Chateau, it's so often we think of Bordeaux, and you don't often hear of a wine called Chateau in Burgundy and Beaujolais. Can you explain how Chateau works in where you are?
So actually, you know, in Burgundy, in Beaujolais, in Rhône, I know less, but each of the village on the coast, on all this line from Burgundy to the south of Beaujolais, in each villages there is a chateau. So there is a Chateau de Fleury. I think there is a Chateau in Villiers-Morgon as well. Each village has this chateau. The thing is that here in Moulin-a-Vent, the Chateau du MoulinaVent has always got an history, a tradition of winemaking. So the first wine making sign in Chateau du MoulinaVent is 1732. So it's at least 3 centuries that wine is being produced here. And I do agree with you. It's not obviously a very popular type of name for Burgundy and Beaujolais, but still it's here. And if you think about Burgundy, actually, the Château de Puligny is a pretty famous estate, Château de Meursault as well, Château de Chambol-Musigny also, Château de Vosne-Romanée also. All these chateaux have been placed under more the name of the family in Burgundy rather than keeping the name of the chateau. Nice. But actually, it's not so, I would say, you know, for each village, tell me something about Moulin-a-Vent. In Moulin-a-Vent, there is one chateau and we are about 200 producers. So there are potentially 199 labels with no chateau and one label with chateau. So obviously it makes it lower visible. But that happens in pretty much in all the villages and appellations for the wine in Burgundy and Beaujolais.
Cool, thank you for that. What was I was going to ask you something else? I had it. Let's see. Oh, what's happening in the vines right now?
In the vines right now, it's a lot of work because so as I showed you when we were in the clos just before. The soils here are very, very sandy. So it's good because it stresses the vines. But in the same time, as soon as we have a little rain, we have a lot of grass growing up. And definitely, the vines in Moulin-a-Vent is very high density. In Château du MoulinaVent is very high density, 10,000 feet per hectare on average. So the competition from between each vine is already pretty hard. So we don't really need the grass to make competition even stronger. So now what happens with this beautiful season that we have got the last 6 weeks, I would say 7 weeks, he's working the soil. We have an organically driven, all the estate is organically driven. So we have to work all the rank of soil when the grass starts to grow. And this is pretty much what happens now. And with this week becoming more rainy, we have some fear about the mildew to spread along the vineyard. So we have some treatment now happening in the vineyard to come into, to prevent the spread of the mildew, which could be, which is definitely the first threat as a disease. This is clearly the first threat for Gamay.
Wow. And we sort of touched on this at the beginning, but how has the corona interrupted? Like, would you be traveling right now in your home, or?
If I had no corona. My job is pretty much so we have one technical director, Brice Lafont, who takes care of the vines and the vineyard and the wines. So he's managing all the production part, I would say. And me, I'm mostly responsible for the representation and sales of the chateau. So I do spend the lot of my time traveling in France and also export. So with no coronavirus, I would probably be in some part of France or of the world. And now I will restart gently from today, actually, with the quarantine being partly done in France.
Good. I'll let you go very shortly. I appreciate your time, but so in New York especially, but Americans are really starting to appreciate Beaujolais as it should be appreciated. Is that happening around the world, or are other markets slow to catch on?
Oh yeah, no, clearly it's happening around the world. How can I tell you that? So actually now we sell out of the domain with the 60 acres we have, we produce 8,000 cases due to this low yield, and half of them are sold in France, half in export, and in export it represents about 20 countries. So, you know, people have been more and more curious, I would say, about our wines, and I think globally about Cru Beaujolais. You know, I think there are two things that makes Cru Beaujolais more and more interesting to people. First is the price. I think we still have very, very good price for the quality of the wine offered. So that's definitely something huge. When you think about the fact that we are between the Northern Rhone and Burgundy, we are definitely an alternative for fine and fine wines, and also with this type of of balance. I mean, we are light wines, I would say, and light red wines are not so easy to find. And also, this is also a matter of taste, in the sense that I think people, wine lovers, are more and more looking for wine with fruit, with acid, with freshness. And clearly, the Gamay is maybe the most famous variety for delivering these type of qualities. So both of these trends, I think, have made Gamays and Cru Beaujolais more and more popular, and we profit from this trend, and we also try to participate, trying to produce good wines from the chateau.
Well, I love your wines, and I look forward to. I always look for them, especially if there's some old wines on like a list somewhere or on a consignment list or something. I appreciate that. Thank you for your time. It's really a pleasure to chat with you, and thank you for showing us around, even though it's windy. And I love seeing your dining room too.
Yeah, that's a Chateau du MoulinaVent inside, you know.
The view of the house, everything. Thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure. And I'll put this up on YouTube, and I'll send you the link when it's up, okay?
Cool, excellent. Thank you very much, Jeff, also for offering me that. And thank you to all the followers.
Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.